The capital had seen tension before, but nothing quite like the moment that unfolded late this afternoon, when an ordinary post-hearing walk through the hallway suddenly turned into one of the most emotionally charged confrontations Washington has witnessed in years. The air seemed to shift the second Senator John Kennedy stepped out of the committee room with his usual mix of wit and swagger, trailed by reporters eager for another memorable soundbite. A few steps behind him, Representative Ilhan Omar emerged, visibly drained from the marathon hearing but carrying the kind of determined calm that only comes from years of weathering criticism and standing her ground against waves of political attacks. What happened next caught everyone off guard, as Kennedy offered what he believed was a casual joke, half humor, half jaba, about Omar's testimony. The entire hallway seemed to freeze. Omar stopped walking. Cameras pivoted, reporters leaned forward, and with the slow, deliberate turn, Omar faced him. She walked back toward the senator, not with anger, but with a clarity that instantly quieted the bustle around them. Her voice, steady but undeniably tired, cut through the hallway. She told him she was exhausted not just from the hearing, but from being reduced to a caricature, from constantly being misrepresented, from serving her country only to be questioned about her loyalty, her intelligence, even her right to be in the very chamber she walked every day. Kennedy blinked, taken aback, but before he could form a reply, Omar reached into her bag and pulled out a thick binder, its pages worn, corners curled, sections tabbed with fluorescent markers. She held it up, and in that moment, the room felt suspended in time. With the eyes of the hallway locked on her, Omar explained that this binder held detailed notes from classified briefings, fact-checking audits, humanitarian trips abroad, bipartisan amendments she had drafted, and attendance logs from committee sessions. Evidence, she said, that contradicted the narrative Kennedy often painted about her. She flipped it open to show proof, a sign-in sheets from meetings Kennedy had missed, project reports he had dismissed, and collaboration logs showing she had worked across the aisle far more than he had publicly acknowledged. Gasps rippled among the reporters. This wasn't political theater. This was documentation or receipts, as they saw it, and Omar wasn't raising her voice or making a spectacle. She was simply laying down the truth. Kennedy opened his mouth to respond, but Omar wasn't done. She reminded him, calmly, that accountability cuts both ways. If he was going to question her credibility in front of cameras, then she had every right to reveal the facts he avoided. Not to embarrass him, she said, but because the public deserved honesty. That last sentence hung in the hallway like a stone dropped in still water. Kennedy's expression shifted, his trademark confidence replaced with a flicker of something more complicated: surprise, maybe, embarrassment, perhaps, or even a reluctant recognition that he had underestimated her. The spectators stood frozen as the confrontation settled into silence. Reporters stared, aides exchanged stunned glances. Even Kennedy seemed momentarily unsure of his footing. Finally, after several moments that felt much longer than they were, he nodded, a small gesture, devoid of politics, signaling a basic acknowledgement of reality. Omar closed her binder with the quiet finality of someone who had spoken her truth without apology. Then she turned and walked away, the heels of her shoes clicking sharply against the polished floor as every camera followed her exit. It wasn't triumph she carried with her, nor anger. It was relief. It was resolve. It was the weight of years finally shifted, if only slightly. As evening settled over Washington, staffers from both offices quietly admitted to reporters that the moment had struck deeper than the headlines would suggest. For Omar, the exchange had been years in the making, a culmination of being misunderstood, mischaracterized, and thrust into culture war narratives that rarely considered her humanity. For Kennedy, the confrontation forced him to face a colleague not as a political foil, but as a dedicated lawmaker whose intelligence and commitment he had too often trivialized. The shock of the moment hadn't created resentment, as many expected. Instead, something surprising happened. The two sides began discussing a bipartisan initiative they had both previously shown interest in but never addressed together. What began as a clash might become the tentative start of collaboration. In the end, Today's moment was not about who humiliated whom or who won the exchange. It revealed something much more meaningful beneath the surface of Washington's daily theatrics. It showed that even in a political climate thick with division, the truth still matters, courage still matters, and sometimes, the most powerful moments happen not in the hearing room, but in the quiet hallway afterward, when someone finally decides they will no longer let others define them. For viewers tired of endless political bickering, today delivered a rare reminder that progress often begins when someone stands firm and simply says, "This is the truth, enough is enough."